Hi and welcome back to the VCE PE Kings, a YouTube channel dedicated to helping you achieve the best possible results in VCE PE. Today's video is the first video in a series based on fitness testing. Over the next few weeks, I'll be covering fitness tests for all of the fitness components. Today's topic, as you can see on the slide, is agility testing. If you find this video helpful, please click on the subscribe button and the bell button so you are notified when new videos are released. Now, before I get started, I would like to just give a quick shout out to my current Year 12 PE class who have been covering fitness testing this week. With their permission, I've used many of the slides that they have created as a basis for the slides that you're going to see today. Now, before we start tests, there's a couple of things that we do need to do. And the first one here is to make sure that you get people to have informed consent. Now, informed consent means that they know about the risks that are involved from undertaking fitness testing and that they've signed off that it's okay. So if they're 18 or older, they can sign for themselves. But if the person that is doing the testing is under 18 years of age, you need to make sure that you get a legal guardian or a parent to sign on their behalf. Now, before they sign, they do have to know of the risks, and the risks can involve things like stroke, cardiac arrest, asthma, soft tissue injuries, and in the very, very worst case scenario, even death. Now, quite often those risks are very, very minimal, but people do need to make sure that they understand that they are potential risks of undertaking fitness testing. The second thing you need to do is you need to make sure that you have people that are doing the fitness testing warming up correctly before their tests. Warm-up should include some movement, so generally low-level cardio based activities. So, jogging is a perfect example of that. And then also doing dynamic stretches, which move their joints through their full range of motion and get them ready to go. Just one other thing about warming up before fitness tests. If you are doing pre-testing and post-testing, which you will be during your fitness program, you need to make sure that the warm-up that you do before your pre-testing is the same sort of warm-up, or the same exact warm-up actually, as you would do in your post-testing. We also need to understand that agility is a combination of both flexibility and speed, and it's the ability to change direction whilst moving. So it's very hard for agility tests to be valid. And if you don't know what valid means, it means, are we actually testing the fitness component that we really want to test? And the reason why it is very hard for this to happen is because quite often the idea of speed or using speed will impact that. So a lot of these tests will measure a mix of speed and the ability to change direction, not just the ability to change direction. So sometimes it can be argued that the validity of some of these tests is a little bit lacking, and we'll talk about that later. So the three tests that we're going to be looking at today are the Illinois Agility Test, the Semo Agility Test, and the 505 Agility Test. So you can quickly see on the table there, we've looked at the what each test involves. So we're looking at laboratory tests. Are they performed in a laboratory, or can they be performed in a laboratory compared to a field test? We're looking at direct tests or indirect tests, and we're looking at maximal test and sub-maximal test. So you can see the boxes that are ticked there. And the reason why I've got laboratory test ticked and field test ticked for the 505 agility test, and I guess there is an argument for the other two as well, is that you can do them in laboratory settings with very highly trained people and make sure that the errors are very, very small. But for the most part, these three tests are generally field tests, and we'll talk about how to make sure the accuracy is great later on. So the first test that we're looking at is the Illinois Agility Test. Now, just really quickly there, you can see on the right-hand side of the page, we have the path that the athlete needs to run. So they need to run from the start in a straight line up to the first cone, back down to the last cone. They need to weave through the 4 cones and back through them on the way back, up to the last cone, and then back through the finish. Now, obviously, the time starts when the person starts, and it finishes when they move past that last cone. The other thing you need to know there is that you are meant to be starting on the ground. So face down on the ground, and when they say go, you need to get up and move. So what it is meant to test is agility, but as I mentioned before, it is a little bit of a problem with validity here for the fact that, as you can see, an athlete is running a total of 36.8 meters in a direct straight line. So if someone's speed is really great and their acceleration is great, they should be able to get a much smaller time than someone whose speed is very slow, because they're traveling nearly 40 meters going straight. So it is a little bit of an issue here, but this is one of the tests that we can do. Sports that it's relevant for a wide range of sports, but example, hockey, soccer, and AFL are just a couple of examples there as well. We could talk about basketball and a couple of others if you wish as well. As we can see here, we do have the ratings, and these are the standard norms that we'd look at. So this is in seconds, obviously. So if someone is under 15.2 for a male or at 17 seconds or less for a female, they are considered excellent, all the way to 19.3 or above for males and 23 seconds and above for females being poor. Now, we'd like to think that elite athletes are going to be in the excellent range, but obviously it's only if agility is specific to the sport that they play. Now, we mentioned before that this is a field test. Okay, it is done in, it can be done outside, it can be in a gym. It's an indirect test because it's not actually testing something directly, but we're getting results indirectly from this test. And it's also sub-maximal. And the whole idea is sub-maximal is the person giving 100% effort, because they should be. But what it is are they being exhausted by the test? And is that the reason why they've had to stop? And the answer here is no. They could keep doing this test for a bit longer before they become exhausted. Some considerations that we need to make sure to allow the test to be reliable are the surface. Now, if you do the testing on a basketball court on a wooden sprung floor one time, and then you do it on asphalt the next time, you're going to have some issues there as well, because people are going to slip a little bit more on one surface than the other. Second thing to take consideration of is the footwear. If you're wearing really average footwear, you are going to slide all over the place doing this test, and your test result is not going to be a true indication of your agility. And the third thing that I just wanted to quickly mention is in the slide before, it showed going from left to right, but you can also run the test going from right to left, which means that you're changing the direction in which you turn. And it's probably not a bad idea to do one of each, because people often have a dominant side that they like to turn to. So you can have a look at both sides and see if there's improvement that needs to be made turning one way or the other. The next test we're looking at is the Semo agility test. Now, again, the Semo agility test is a test, but what it actually tests is moving in a couple of different directions. So this includes shuffling sideways. It also says diagonal backpedaling, and also running forward as well. And as I said, it tests agility in a range of different directions. The sports that it's suited for are things like tennis, where you're going to be moving sideways, forwards, and backwards, depending on the shot that you're trying to return. Volleyball, badminton, netball, and basketball. But it's basically suited to a whole range of different sports. Now, this one's suited, or more specific to sports that involve moving backwards and sideways as well, because in the Illinois agility test, you're always moving forwards. And I'll explain what this means in a second. So again, it is a field test, it is an indirect test, and it's a sub-maximal test. As we mentioned before, people are going at 100% here, but the reason why they stop the test is not because they are exhausted, it's for the fact that they've finished the test in a quick period of time. And again, I'll just let you have a look there, but for males, they want to be trying to do this under 10.7 seconds, and for females, 12.19 seconds will get you in the excellent category. So as you can see here, all it takes is 4 cones and a stopwatch. So the cones are put in a rectangle like that, so 5.7 meters between cone 1 and 3, and 3.6 between 4 and 3, and you've got your rectangle there. As I mentioned before, the athlete needs to be facing in the same direction. So this is a bird's eye image of our little test area, and we're going to imagine that the athlete is looking towards the writing, okay? Towards where those arrows are and things like that. So the key down there is that a red arrow there is someone doing side steps, the blue dotted line is running backwards, and the green one is moving forwards. So you start at cone 1, and you need to sidestep to cone 2. Now, every time you get to a cone, you don't just step over it, you need to go around it, so keep that in mind. So you've got to cone 2 from doing side steps, and the next thing you need to do is backpedaling from cone 2 to cone 3. You then run forward from cone 3 to cone 1. You then backpedal to cone 4. You then run forward to cone 2, and then to finish off, you need to sidestep again past cone 1. Now, the stopwatch starts when the person begins their first sideward shuffle, and it finishes when they pass that last cone there. A couple of things to keep in mind here. If you practice this test a couple of times, you become a lot better at it. A lot of people, when they first try this test, struggle to do the diagonal backpedaling, and they actually go off course, which causes a time delay as well. So have a few practices and you'll get better at it straight away. The last test we're looking at today is the 505 agility test. And what it involves is a short sprint before turning 180 degrees and then running back in the opposite direction. It is an indirect test because it cannot give you a completely accurate or specific measure of the athlete's physiological capabilities like VO2 max test. That'll actually give you a very direct and concise figure, whereas this one is not that. It's also sub-maximal. Again, they're trying their hardest, but they are not exhausted from this test. And in the right setting, it could be a laboratory test, or it may not be a laboratory test. So if you've got the right equipment and you've got light gates and stuff like that measure exactly when someone crosses and someone comes back, that is going to be much more of a laboratory test, and it can be done in laboratory conditions. Unfortunately, in high schools, a lot of schools can't afford those gates, so you can do it with a stopwatch as well, but that would make it much more of a field test, and the results are not going to be as exact. Relevant sports, so it's relevant for any sport where you need to turn 180 degrees and run back. So a perfect example is running between wickets in cricket. You run up to the crease and then you turn around 180 degrees and then you run back. We've also got running up and down the court in basketball as well, is another example where that is very important. So as you can see in the bottom here, this is what the test would look like. You'll have a starting line, and I would generally suggest that is a row of cones. You then have some more cones, or this is where you would have your light gates if you had them, where it says the stop-start gate. 5 meters past there, we have a line, and I would generally say I would use a line on a basketball court for that. So as mentioned before, timing gates or a stopwatch is really important, and again, the surface is really important because if it's slippery, someone is going to fall. And I will just skip through those there, but we've already spoken about that. So how it works is you're at the starting line and you sprint. When you are ready to sprint, you sprint as fast as you can. Now the person with the stopwatch, if you are using a stopwatch, will be standing at the start and stop gate. And when the person passes that gate, they start timing. The person then continues running for the 5 meters to the turning point as quickly as they can. They need to stop. They need to make sure their foot touches the line, and then they need to turn back around and run back through the start and stop gate. The person with the stopwatch will stop that timer as they run through that gate. So the only time of this test that's actually being tested is when they run through the stop-start gate and then they come back. So they're only being timed for 10 meters of the sprint. The first 10 meters is actually only to get them up to speed, so it's not being the results aren't being affected by the person's acceleration. Now you are meant to do this at least twice with a 3-minute recovery. Now, if we think back to why you would do the 3-minute recovery, it's so our PC stores can fully replenish. So that would be a passive recovery there to allow for the person to give it another maximal effort without having issues with starting to use other energy systems other than the ATP-CP system. Now, we've got some mean scores here for cricket because we did mention that cricket is very important. It's very important in cricket to turn. So you can see there that people do have a dominant way to turn. And between male and female cricketers, it's actually slightly different. But you can see that people do prefer to turn one way or another. So it's very important that you probably try to do both left foot turning and right foot turning. So in summary today, the first one is agility is a combination of both flexibility and speed, which results in the performer being able to change direction quickly whilst under control. All of the 3 tests have their pros and cons, but you need to make sure you choose the right test for the right scenario to make sure it's specific to the sport that you are actually trying to assess for. Under the study design, it does require you to remember 2 tests for each fitness component. So we've covered 3 today, but as I tell my kids, if you can remember more than 2, It's never going to hurt you. So please make sure you remember these, and you'll be able to then recite those back in an exam if you need to. The last thing I just want to say is if you did like this video and found it helpful, please click on the subscribe button and also the bell icon to receive updates when the new videos are posted. And if you could do me a massive favor and also let your friends know about it so we can start to get a really great community of people that want to help each other achieve really well in PE. Thanks again for watching. I hope you've learned something, and I'll speak to you next time I post a video. Thank you.